Hi, John.
I guess we can give guys an extra, 2 minutes for them to be able to join us so we can begin. Hope that's okay with you guys. Yeah. Okay. Hi everyone, and welcome to our first data protection training. I'm glad you all could join me today. When I sent you this invite, I think my biggest fear was having Victor and I alone on the call. I know everyone's busy, so I appreciate you taking the time to join us. It's great to see representation from all the three boards. In this training, I'll be using the presentation slides that we have prepared, and I've enlisted the help of Victor here to assist us with screen sharing and navigating through the slides. Victor, thank you so much for your help. I would also like to inform everyone that this session is being recorded for the benefit of for our colleagues who are unable to attend. We'll have a question and answer session at the end, so don't worry if something pops up into your head during the training, just jot it down and we can chat about it after the presentation. Once again, welcome, and I guess we can begin. So now what we are going to learn today, or rather be trained on today, is on data protection and compliance. Now, as an organization that collects and handles personal data, it's crucial that we understand our obligations and best practices for data protection. This training will take you through your role as a board member when it comes to data protection, as there's increasing pressure on boards to oversee data privacy. Data collection and use is a growing practice, but also a compliance challenge. Boards are fiduciaries, as you're well aware, so meaning they have the legal duty to act in the organization's best interest. And in this case, it includes protecting our stakeholders' data. Now, towards the end, we'll also touch on your rights as a data subject. So data protection is not just about compliance, it's also about building trust with our stakeholders and protecting the privacy of individuals whose information we're entrusted with. So let's dive in and explore this important topic. Next slide, please. So now data protection basically means all the things we do to keep your personal information safe. And by personal information, I mean anything that can be tied back to a specific person, like your name, your email address, even your financial information, such as your bank details. So data protection follows that information that I've just mentioned throughout its entire journey with us. So from the moment we collect your data, all the way to when we get rid of it for good. So during this particular period, we have to ensure that we are protecting your data. So and anything we do with that information, like storing it, using it, or sharing it, that all falls under processing. The bottom line is that data protection makes sure we handle your personal information legally, fairly, and in a way that's clear and upfront. Next slide. So the next slide contains the categories of the personal and the sensitive data, so you can skim through it when you get the chance to. So on the left side, we have the general personal data. Sorry, Victor, I'll take you back to the bit where we've listed the general personal data and the sensitive. Yes, thank you for that. So now on the left side, we have the general personal data, such as your name, your date of birth. And on the right side, we have sensitive personal data, such as your health data. It's important to remember that data protection regulations focus on protecting personal data. This refers to information that can be used to identify a specific individual, as I've earlier mentioned. So now either directly like your name, or indirectly through a combination of factors that can tie it back to a specific individual. So now let's use an example. The date today is 10th, or rather 10th July 2024. So this date, what if revealed, no one can know that it's personal data, because it could be a birthday, it could be an anniversary, it could be a random date. So now without additional information, it's impossible to identify a particular person associated with that date. Next slide, please. Thank you. So who are the key actors in data protection? I'd like you to imagine you're sharing your email address with a charity to sign up for a newsletter. So in this scenario, you are the data subject. That means you're the individual whose personal information is being collected. And the personal information being collected here is your email address, correct? And then the charity, they are the data controller. They decide why your information is being collected and how it is used. In this case, they want to send you updates about their work. Maybe they use a company to manage the email list, like MailChimp. That company would be considered a data processor. They handle the data on behalf of the charity, but the charity is still ultimately responsible for the data. The charity may also have a data protection officer. This is the person who's within the organization who makes sure that they're following all the data protection rules when it comes to processing personal information. And lastly, there's the ODPC. That stands for the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner here in Kenya, the government body that oversees data protection regulations and makes sure that everyone is playing by the rules. So as it stands, we have registered KLL and NRCF as data controllers with the ODPC, and are currently working on the F1R application to also register F1R as a data controller with the ODPC. Next slide, please. So now we've discussed the importance of data protection and the key actors. Now let's explore how we can effectively implement data protection within our organization. This requires a collaborative effort, and the board's leadership is crucial in achieving success. The 4 key areas where your support is essential. So the first one being on the compliance bit, the board needs to set the tone. You're the leaders, and your commitment to data protection sets the standard for the entire organization. When you show you take it seriously, everyone else follows suit. So by actively championing data protection, we send a clear message throughout the organization that respecting individual privacy is a core value we uphold in the organization. With buy-in, it's vital that the board is fully aware of our data protection obligations. Understanding the legal landscape and potential consequences of non-compliance is critical for informed decision-making. Also, implementing a data privacy program effectively requires dedicated resources. So this may involve allocating additional staff time or getting a consultant with data protection expertise. In our case, I was hired to offer support in this area as I'm currently serving as a DPO. There was a task force that was created, which has been making strides for the past 10 months to ensure that data protection by design is the ultimate goal. The task force have brought about many changes, from the creation and implementation of policies, such as privacy notices on our websites, to setting the tone in the organization. They've been behind it. The privacy notice is the one which is displayed on our website. It's written in plain English. It outlines to our various stakeholders, from our beneficiaries to our parents, to our vendors and suppliers, to our employees, on how the organization collects, uses, stores, and secures personal data. Also, the privacy notice explains the individual rights regarding their data. And we also have a legal consultant with data protection expertise who assists us to see through our goal of data protection by design. So now, data protection isn't a one-person job. It takes everyone involving together across different departments to make it work. We need buy-in from both the board and the management. That way, everyone's on the same page and willing to collaborate to put these data protection measures in place. And the role of the board when it comes to the budget, data protection often requires additional financial investment. This might include costs for staff training programs, system upgrades to enhance data security. Victor and his team are hard at work behind the scenes, meeting with our system service providers to enforce stricter controls on the Salesforce platform, which houses our most critical data, which belongs to our beneficiaries. Now, the board also, on recommendation by Execo, plays a crucial role in allocating a budget to support these data protection initiatives. By providing the necessary resources, you demonstrate that your commitment to achieving and maintaining data protection compliance in the organization. Now that you have an idea of what your role entails, we'll also look at the obligations of the three entities as a data controller, which brings us to the next slide. Thank you, Victor. In certain situations, we may need to share personal data with third parties. We only share personal data when it's absolutely necessary for legitimate purpose. Let me give you a few examples. Sometimes our staff needs access to our stakeholders' personal information in order to perform their work responsibilities. For instance, I will need access to your contact information to be able to communicate effectively on board matters. In some cases, the law might require us to share information with the police or other regulatory bodies. Would also do this if you were legally obligated to. And in other scenarios, we also work with companies such as, behind the scenes, like our auditors. They might need access to some information to play their part, but we make sure they follow the same strict rules we do about protecting our stakeholders' data. It is important to note that while we have or have had data protection clauses and others confidentiality contractual clauses in place in the principal agreements with our third-party service providers, we're looking to change that. So we're looking to now introduce or create specific agreements called data processing or data sharing agreements. These agreements will apply to everyone we work with, from the accountants who handle our financial and tax matters, to the persons that provide school uniforms and shoes for the kids, and even the art teachers that offer art classes during our Saturday programs. Every service provider will need to sign these new agreements before we can share personal data of our stakeholders with them. On data transfer, there may be instances where personal data needs to be transferred internationally, for example, from Kenya to the US or vice versa. Now, Kenyan data protection laws require us to have proper safeguards in place whenever we transfer data internationally. Think of it like sending a valuable package. When we need to make sure it gets there securely, right? So there are a few ways we go about doing this. We only transfer the data that's absolutely necessary for the specific project. So less data means less risk. The Data Protection Task Force is working hard on a data transfer policy. This policy will be like a roadmap for how we handle international data transfers in a way that's compliant with the Kenyan law and keeps everyone information safe. We also have security measures to protect it from unauthorized access. Effective data security is crucial for several reasons, which we'll explore in the next slide. Thank you, Victor. Okay, so now on data security does play a critical role in ensuring we comply with data protection laws. In Kenya, organizations need to adopt what we call technical and organizational measures. If we don't follow these rules, we could face hefty fines and penalties and even damage to our reputation. But that's not all. Data security is also crucial because it protects the personal information we handle. This includes everyone from our staff and donors to the beneficiaries and even yourselves, the board. So now strong data security is like a fortress for this information. It keeps safe from unauthorized access or breaches, which can also cause serious problems for individuals and the organization as a whole. So how do we build this data security fortress, you might wonder? There are a couple of ways we go about it, and I'll probably give examples here. This is not all the security measures we have in place, but these are some of the few examples we have. So one of the key technical measures of data security we adopt is access control or limited access. We only let people see information they need for their job, and it minimizes the risk of someone accessing something they shouldn't. So someone like Victor only access a particular information to be able to serve his role as an IT manager. Then we also have strong password securities in place. Now, complex, unique passwords for each account created by our IT department, and the regular password changes are effected to help thwart what we call hacking attempts or hackers. So now we also have a two-factor authentication that adds an extra layer of security. Think of it like a double lock on a door, right? So an example of one organizational measure we adopt is employee education or awareness. Our employees are a critical line of defense against data security threats. Regular training programs are essential to keep them with the knowledge and skills to recognize and prevent security risks. So now this could involve things like creating strong passwords and reporting suspicious activity. By empowering them with this knowledge, we make sure that our entire data security system is much stronger. Now remember, the data security is an ongoing process. We need to constantly be vigilant and and adapt to new threats. But of course, despite our best efforts, data breaches can still occur, which will bring us to the next slide. Having a well-defined incident response plan or a data breach response plan to respond to a data breach is crucial for minimizing the damage. We have laid out a plan that outlines steps to identify and contain a breach and notify impacted individuals and also relevant authorities as required by law. And before we talk about a data breach response plan, you're probably wondering, what is a data breach? What does a data breach entail? A data breach is generally taken to be an unauthorized access to personal data. So what risk does that pose to someone or an organization? So someone someone accesses your data without you being aware and without permission. So what risk does that pose to you as a data subject? Now that to a data subject, the risks could be maybe threat to personal safety. Someone has accessed your location data, your physical or home address. That's a threat to personal safety. For others, it's identity theft. When someone steals the information, financial loss could lead to damage to reputation and so forth. And what about an organization? What are the consequences of a data breach in an organization? Now, data breaches in an organization can cause financial loss, reputational damage, and legal issues for the organization if a severe data breach occurs. Now, it's important that we all strive to protect the stakeholders' data that we have access to. An example of a data breach could be where a board member loses his or her personal laptop, which had access to the organization's drive. In that case, we request that it be reported immediately. So if you ever suspect a data breach, maybe you see some unusual activity on your account, or someone mentioned something fishy that is information you shouldn't be privy to, or you have lost a device and are worried that someone could access crucial organization data, on it. Your top priority is to report it right away to the data protection officer. The DPO will then follow the steps in our data breach response plan to get things under control. Now, let me paint a scenario for you. So you have a board member who is also the relationship manager for a particular sponsor, and he or she needs to communicate about the status of the sponsor's beneficiary. Now, the board member would go to Naomi to extract this information, right? So Naomi, in this case, should only share the minimum amount of information of the beneficiary necessary to facilitate communication between the sponsor and the relationship manager, who's the board member in this case. So this information might include basic information as sharing too much details about the beneficiary's circumstances could be considered a data breach. Now, once the board member has been given these details by the donor relations officer, they should not share this information with anyone else other than the sponsor. Now, another scenario could be that, you know how at our FONR and our CF board meetings, we love to share these inspiring stories about our students' successes. And I'm always excited to see your reaction to the impact we have made to these children's lives. Well, a data breach could happen if that information accidentally gets into the wrong hands. So imagine if you told someone a cool story about our student, that story somehow ended up all over social media. That wouldn't be good, right? So it's important not to share those student stories outside of board meetings unless you're sharing the same with the student sponsor. Now, the situations where a board member could also receive an email that appears to be from someone posing to be part of the 3 entities. So someone could be posing to be part of KLL and they're requesting urgent information about our stakeholders' data, maybe, for example, in this case, an employee's data. So we encourage board members to be cautious about emails requesting board personal data. If we receive an unusual email making an unusual request, do report any suspicious emails to the DPO, and I will get in touch with the IT department. Now, board members are potential targets for phishing attacks, so it's crucial, and you should be able to take caution in your attempts to protect this data. Last year, we had a phishing attempt on one of our board members where someone was posing to be NRCF's service provider, and it's great that the board member reached out to us. Then we also have board members on here who have access to the Salesforce platform and would like to reiterate that the personal information you have access to, do guard it like a knight would when protecting a castle, which brings me to the next slide. Thank you, Victor. So the next slide, this slide explores the role of a board member when a data breach occurs. Now, following data breaches, the board should be updated in a report during the board meetings on the nature and the scope of the incidents, the data affected, and potential consequences. The board should hold management accountable for the breach and the response. All right, let's talk about the worst case scenario, a major data breach that could really hurt the organization. For instance, Salesforce has been hacked and all our beneficiaries' data have been posted all over the internet. In these situations, the board chair will call an emergency meeting right away. At this meeting, board members will huddle together to figure out what happened, how bad it is, and what needs to be done to fix it. This is a chance for the board to decide on the best course of action and make sure that we have the resources we need to get things under control. Basically, these emergency meetings are, imagine them like you're in a war room for data breaches. We get everyone together, assess the situation, and plan to address it head on. It's important to remember that data breaches can damage an organization's reputation and also cause a substantial financial risk due to penalties. The board should be involved in developing strategies to mitigate these risks. Next slide, please. We have a media and child protection policy that outlines some simple rules for visitors interacting with beneficiaries at our offices. So when you do visit our offices, for instance, during the Saturday program, you'll be provided with this policy to sign. Generally, taking pictures or videos of beneficiaries is not allowed. The only exception is given to our sponsors who would like to take pictures of their beneficiaries. Even for sponsors, we encourage taking photos that show respect for the beneficiary's dignity and privacy. The policy also highlights that posting photos of our beneficiaries on social media is not allowed. So it is important to know that as an organization, we have consent to process our beneficiaries' photos for marketing or or promotional purposes, but the consent granted to us does not extend to our sponsors. Now, this policy also captures that we may use your photos for promotional purposes, but only with your explicit consent. Okay, so we've covered your role as board members and the organization's commitment to data protection, but that's not all. We also process your personal data. So let's switch gears a bit and talk about your rights as data subjects in the next slide. Thank you. So transparency is key when it comes to processing data. So the types of personal data captured in this slide are those we collect from you. This includes identification information, such as your name, with supporting identification documents, such as your national identity card information or passport details. We also collect or process your contact information, such as your phone number or email address. We collect your biographical information, and we also process your photos. So now we do obtain all this personal data directly from you. You're probably wondering what we use your personal data for. Let us explore this in the next slide. Now, we use your personal data for specific and legitimate purposes, one of them being that your contact information allows us to communicate with you effectively. So keep you informed about our activities and manage your membership effectively. For board and committee members, we may use some personal data such as your name to maintain accurate records of meetings. We like to feature photos of our board members on the website. So it helps put a face to the names and shows the leadership team behind our organizations, right? So we use your data to comply with legal and regulatory obligations when it comes to doing our annual filings every year. So we need to submit reports to the Kenyan government authorities. When it comes to NRCF, we have to submit our annual reports. Also, when it comes to KLL, we also need to submit our annual reports to the government authorities. So we've covered the data we've collected and how we use it. Let's quickly look at your rights as a data subject in the next slide. You have a right to be informed about how we use your data, which we have touched on in the previous slide. You have a right to request a copy of the personal data we hold about you. If any of your personal data is inaccurate or incomplete, you have a right to request that we rectify it or correct it. In certain circumstances, you have a right to request that we erase your personal data from our systems. You also have a right to request that we restrict the processing of your personal data or object to the processing of your personal data. You also have a right to request that we transfer your personal data to another organization if it's technically feasible, and so forth. So now, what is important to note when it comes to these data subject rights is that we have laid out a clear procedure for you to be able to exercise these rights. Because you can't just come and say, yeah, I'm choosing to exercise my rights without informing someone. So now, if you do want to exercise your right, you just have to reach out to the data protection officer, then they can be able to assist you in how to process those rights. Next slide, please. Sorry, could you go back to slides on yes, thank you, Victor. So now we understand that you may have questions or concerns about how the respective entities you serve handle your personal data. We are committed to addressing these concerns effectively and transparently. If you have any concerns, you have the right to file a complaint with our data protection officer. Here's a simple overview of the complaint process. You file your complaint by email to the dataprotection@ngongora.org, or you can be able to clearly outline your specific concerns regarding your data privacy. Then we will promptly acknowledge receipt of your complaint and provide you with an estimated time frame for resolution. We will then thoroughly investigate your concerns and may reach out to you for additional information if necessary. Once the investigation is complete, the DPO will inform you of the outcome. If your complaint is valid, we will take appropriate corrective action. Next slide. So let us conclude this session by getting the key takeaways from this training. So now today we focused on the importance of data protection and your role in upholding it. Let's recap some key takeaways. So understanding data protection goes beyond mere compliance. It's about safeguarding individual privacy, building trust with our stakeholders, and operating within legal frameworks. As data privacy becomes a core principle of good governance, of good corporate governance, the board's role becomes even more critical. So each member needs to be familiar with the data protection responsibilities. We have data protection policies in place, but achieving excellence requires a collaborative effort. Everyone in the organization plays a part in responsible data handling. So moving forward, by working together, we can ensure robust data protection practices are put in place. Always collected a lot of information on our students, but things are changing. With the change in the Kenyan data protection landscape, this means we need to take a fresh look at what what old habits we had, right? So, and then trying to change what we were doing previously. So by keeping the amount of beneficiary data we collect to a minimum, we make it less likely for someone to get a hold of it, and we stay on the right side of the law. This may mean sharing less with the third parties, but it puts our beneficiaries' privacy first. Special mention is given to our beneficiaries' data since they're minors. Kenyan data protection laws consider them a vulnerable group, so we need to be extra careful with the information. With that, I'll open the floor for any questions you may have.
This is Dan. I have to run to another call, but I just wanted to say very quickly that this was incredibly thorough, very impressive. I work in a tech data privacy space, individual security, user data privacy, security, and this was very comprehensive. You should be very proud of that presentation. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Are there any questions? If you're too shy to ask a question, or you need assistance or more information, you can just reach out to me. I'm always available for any questions you may have. Just drop an email, let me know, and how I can be able to best assist you when it comes to data protection. But don't be afraid, I'll be sharing these presentation materials. Thank you, Jeff. I'll be sharing the presentation materials with you, so please have a look out for them. And then I'll move. If there are no questions, I can maybe have thank you, Chris. I can have Victor take us through the next slide. I have a survey that I need your help in filling out, so I can be able to improve on steps that we are taking as the Data Protection Task Force when it comes to having this presentation materials presented to you. So please fill out. Please, let me know if you are unable to access the link, which is on there. Let me know if you have any additional concerns or questions. Please, I'll really appreciate that.
And
Victor,
Brian,
I think Amy has a question.
yes, please. Amy.
not a question, just let me pile on to what Dan said. I'd just like to recognize for this group, Maureen, Kelvin, Mary, Naomi, and Victor, who have been the driving force behind this. Maureen has done a fabulous job of summarizing this. There's an incredible amount of work that has occurred behind this, and there's still a little bit to do, but we have gone so far in protecting our most vulnerable populations. So I just want to publicly recognize and thank that group and ask Maureen and Victor if you will share this group's appreciation to everybody else who's had a role in this. Thanks. Very well done.
Thank you so much. Will do. Victor, could you also share on the last bits on the resources? So I wanted to highlight on the resources section. So I've attached some documents if you'd like any more information on the same. So there's a personal data protection handbook, which is prepared by ODPC. If you'd like to take a look take a look at it and see what personal information it touches on. We also have a data breach response plan and how we go about responding to data breaches. We have a protection commitment statement, which I'll be sharing with the board to be able to sign when it comes to their commitment. They're telling us that they're committing to adhering or complying to our data protection policies internally and also externally, which means our regulations. Then we also have our media and child protection policy, and finally our privacy notice. So we have our privacy notice on our websites. So if you guys can be able to look at it and see what rights you have under there, right? So you have your role as a board member, but you also have your rights as a data subject that you need to be aware of. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you. I think I'm seeing a question here by Judy. Can you put the survey in the chat? Let me see if I can do that, Judy.
I can't access it from this document.
Okay.
And why don't we do a follow-up, Maureen? I know you're gonna follow up with
I'll
some
be
things. Let's
sending-
just talk
Yeah.
about the
We
things
can
that'll be
discuss it
helpful.
later.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I'll be sharing the materials with you, then I'll also be attaching the link. Thank you. Yeah. I think, Amy, if you said your few words as a project manager for a task force, you can conclude the meeting.
Very well.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Okay, thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.